My name is Max Brewer, and I'm an IT consultant who apparently married above my league. At least that's what Erin's been telling anyone who will listen for the past 6 months. I found this out the hard way, through a combination of forgotten muted phone calls and her increasingly careless contempt. Our suburban home had become a stage where she performed the role of the dissatisfied wife, and I played the oblivious husband. The performance was so convincing that I almost believed it myself. "You're working late again?" I asked Tuesday evening, watching her apply lipstick with the kind of care she used to reserve for our anniversary dinners. "Client presentation," she said, without looking at me. "Morrison's biggest account. Peter thinks I'm ready to lead the pitch." Peter. Everything revolved around Peter these days. Peter thinks this, Peter says that. Peter believes Erin has executive potential. I'd met him twice at company functions. A silver-haired man with expensive suits and the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. "When will you be back?" "Late. Don't wait up." She grabbed her purse, paused at the mirror one more time, then kissed my cheek with the mechanical affection of a departing roommate. After she left, I opened my laptop and did what any suspicious IT consultant would do. I checked our phone records. The pattern was there, clear as code. Calls to Peter's personal line at odd hours, text message spikes during her supposed girls' nights out, location data that put her at hotels across town during lunch meetings that supposedly happened at the office. My best friend Erin called while I was staring at the evidence. "How's married life treating you?" he asked, with his usual cheerful ignorance. "Like a subscription service I forgot to cancel," I said. "That bad?" "Let's just say I'm getting excellent value for my investment in someone else's happiness." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Erin laughed, but I wasn't joking. The woman I'd married, the ambitious, driven marketing student who'd promised we'd build something together, had been replaced by someone who saw me as a stepping stone to something better. The next morning, I decided to test my theory. I made coffee for 2, set out her favorite mug, and waited. Erin appeared 20 minutes later, already dressed for work, scrolling through her phone. "Coffee's ready," I said. "Can't. Running late." She grabbed a protein bar from the counter. "Late night?" She wasn't even listening. "How was the presentation?" That got her attention. For just a moment, her thumb stopped scrolling. "Fine. Good." Peter was impressed. "What was the client?" "The automotive account. Big budget, lots of moving pieces." She was already heading for the door. "See you tonight." I knew for a fact that Morrison Marketing had lost their automotive client 3 months ago. It had been in the industry newsletter I subscribed to, the one Erin used to read over my shoulder during breakfast. That evening, I called Laura Graft. "Mrs. Graft, this is Max Brewer. We met at the restaurant last week." "I remember." Her voice was cool, controlled. "I was wondering when you'd call. I think we should meet." "I think you're right." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, far from Morrison Marketing and the suburban bubble where our spouses were conducting their affair. Laura arrived first, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall like she was preparing for war. "How long have you known?" she asked when I sat down. "Suspected for months. Confirmed last week." "You?" "6 weeks. I hired a private investigator." She slid a manila envelope across the table. "Photos, hotel receipts, text messages. Everything you need to know and several things you probably don't want to." I opened the envelope carefully, like I was defusing a bomb. The first photo showed Erin and Peter entering a downtown hotel, his hand on the small of her back. The second showed them leaving 3 hours later. The third was a close-up of them kissing in his car. "There are more," Laura said quietly. I closed the envelope. "What do you want to do about it?" I want them to understand what it feels like to be humiliated. Her voice never changed tone, but her knuckles were white around her coffee cup. I want them to lose everything they think makes them better than us. That's a tall order. I'm a corporate lawyer, Max. Tall orders are my specialty. She outlined her plan with the precision of someone who'd been thinking about this for weeks. It wasn't about violence or dramatic confrontations. It was about patience, planning, and the slow dismantling of the life they'd built on our backs. Peter thinks he's untouchable because he's the CEO. Erin thinks she's safe because she's sleeping with the boss. They're both wrong. What do you need from me? Your IT skills, your access to Erin's accounts, and your willingness to watch her world fall apart piece by piece. I thought about Erin's laugh when she'd called me predictable, about the way she'd touched Peter's hand while mocking my loyalty, about the 7 years I'd spent believing we were building something together. When do we start? Laura smiled for the first time since I'd known her. It wasn't a pleasant expression. We already have. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange double life. During the day, I maintained the routine of the oblivious husband, making coffee, asking about her day, pretending to believe her increasingly elaborate lies. At night, I worked with Laura to build our case. Laura's private investigator had been thorough. We had photos of Erin and Peter at restaurants across the city, hotel receipts charged to his corporate card, and a paper trail of company resources being used for personal entertainment. More importantly, we had access to Peter's calendar through his assistant, who'd grown tired of covering for his afternoon disappearances. The key is timing, Laura explained during one of our evening meetings. We need to coordinate the revelation for maximum impact. We were sitting in her downtown law office after hours, surrounded by files and coffee cups. Laura had changed from her courtroom attire into jeans and a sweater, but she still carried herself like she was preparing for battle. Erin's up for promotion to senior account director, I said, reading from her email, which I'd gained access to through a password recovery she'd done on our shared computer. The decision gets made next month. Perfect. Peter's been pushing for her promotion despite her lack of qualifications. The board's been asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests they're already suspicious about his judgment regarding female employees. Laura pulled out another file. Peter's not as careful as he thinks. This isn't his first affair with a subordinate. There was an incident 2 years ago with a junior associate that the company settled quietly. Settled? Harassment lawsuit. The woman transferred to the West Coast office and signed a non-disclosure agreement, but NDAs don't prevent internal company reviews. I stared at the documents. You're building a pattern. I'm documenting a pattern that already exists. Laura's smile was sharp. Peter Morrison thinks he's above consequences because he's been above consequences. That's about to change. The first phase of our plan was subtle. I began documenting Erin's lies with the methodical approach I used for debugging code. Every late night, every weekend conference, every client dinner that didn't appear on Morrison's public calendar, I logged it all. Meanwhile, Laura started having lunch with Erin. She's surprisingly easy to manipulate, Laura reported after their third meeting. She thinks I'm the lonely executive wife looking for friendship. She's been very open about her dissatisfaction with her marriage. What kind of dissatisfaction? According to Erin, you're holding her back. You don't understand her ambition. You're threatened by her success, and you're inadequate. The words hit harder than I'd expected, even though I'd been preparing for them. She said that? She said much worse. But here's the interesting part. She also told me about Peter's promises. He's going to leave me, promote her to vice president, and they're going to run Morrison Marketing together. Is any of that true? Laura laughed, but there was no humor in it. Peter's never leaving me. I control half his assets and know where all the bodies are buried. As for the promotion, the board would revolt if he made someone with her experience a VP. So he's lying to her. Spectacularly. Which gives us leverage over both of them. The second phase began when I started my own deception. I let Erin think I was becoming suspicious, but in a bumbling, easily managed way. I asked obvious questions about her schedule, made comments about her new clothes, and generally played the role of the jealous husband who was too incompetent to actually catch his cheating wife. "You seem distracted lately," I said one evening while she was getting ready for another late night. "Work's been stressful. The Morrison account is demanding. Maybe I should call Peter and thank him for giving you such great opportunities." Erin's hand froze on her lipstick. "That's not necessary." "I'd like to. He's been so good to you." "Max, please don't. It would be unprofessional." "If you say so." I shrugged and went back to my laptop, letting her think she'd successfully deflected my suspicion. What she didn't know was that I'd already called Peter's office and scheduled a meeting for the following week. His assistant had been surprisingly helpful when I'd explained that I wanted to discuss a potential IT consulting contract for Morrison Marketing. The meeting was set for Thursday afternoon, the same time Erin had told me she'd be in a client presentation across town. Laura and I spent hours preparing for what she called the confrontation phase. We rehearsed scenarios, planned responses, and built contingencies for every possible reaction. "Remember," she said the night before my meeting with Peter, "you're not there to accuse him of anything. You're there to plant seeds of doubt about his security. And if he realizes what I'm doing?" Then we moved to Phase 3 ahead of schedule. Phase 3, as Laura had explained it, involved the systematic destruction of both their careers through the strategic release of information to the right people at the right time. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its scope. But first, I had to sit across from the man who'd been sleeping with my wife and pretend to discuss network security protocols. Thursday afternoon arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I walked into Morrison Marketing's downtown offices. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success and ambition. Erin had always loved coming here, had talked about it like it was her natural habitat. Peter's office occupied a corner of the 15th floor, with views of the city and enough space for a conference table that probably cost more than my car. He stood when I entered, tall, confident, wearing a suit that fit like it had been made for him. "Max Brewer," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand and looked him in the eye. "All good things, I hope." "Of course. Erin speaks very highly of your technical expertise. She's mentioned you quite a bit, too. She thinks you're an excellent mentor." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or guilt. "She's a talented employee. I'm happy to support her career development." We sat down at his conference table, and I opened my laptop. "I understand you're looking to upgrade your network security infrastructure." "Among other things, yes." For the next hour, I walked Peter through a comprehensive security audit that I'd designed specifically for this meeting. I showed him vulnerabilities in their current system, demonstrated how easily employee communications could be monitored, and explained the legal implications of data breaches. "The most common security risk," I said, pulling up a slide about email monitoring, "comes from employees who think their communications are private when they're actually stored on company servers." Peter shifted in his chair. "What kind of communications?" "Everything. Emails, text messages sent through company phones, calendar appointments, even location data from company devices." I clicked to the next slide. "Most employees don't realize that companies have the legal right to monitor all communications that pass through their networks. And this monitoring, it's automatic?" "It can be. Some systems flag unusual patterns, like personal communications during work hours or meetings that don't appear on official schedules." Peter was quiet for a long moment, staring at the presentation. How would someone know if their communications were being monitored? They wouldn't. That's the point. I closed my laptop and looked at him directly. Of course, most companies only review communications when there's a specific concern. HR issues, potential harassment claims, that sort of thing. The color had drained from Peter's face. Harassment claims? It's more common than you'd think, especially in companies where executives have close working relationships with their subordinates. I stood up and packed my laptop. I'll send you a proposal by the end of the week. Thank you for your time, Mr. Graft. Morrison, he corrected automatically. Peter Morrison. Of course, my apologies. I shook his hand again. Please give my regards to your wife. I left him sitting at his conference table, staring out at the city, probably wondering how much of his affair with Erin had been documented on company systems. The answer, thanks to Laura's thorough investigation, was all of it. The transformation began immediately. That evening, Erin came home early for the first time in months, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something that looked almost like panic. How was your day? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Fine. Busy. She poured herself a large glass of wine, another first. Erin usually stuck to sparkling water on weeknights. The client presentation go well? What client presentation? The one you mentioned this morning. The reason you'd be working late. She blinked, clearly trying to remember which lie she'd told me. Oh, that. Yes, it went well. Finished early. That's great. I had an interesting day, too. Oh? She was trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tension. Had a meeting at Morrison Marketing. Beautiful offices. I can see why you love working there. Erin's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. A meeting? Potential consulting contract. I met with the CEO, Peter Morrison. Nice guy. He speaks very highly of you. You met with Peter? For about an hour. We talked about network security, employee communications, that sort of thing. I finally looked up at her. He seemed very interested in the technical details. Erin set down her wine glass with shaking hands. What kind of technical details? Oh, boring IT stuff. Email monitoring, communication logs, digital forensics. I shrugged. The kind of thing that helps companies protect themselves from liability issues. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to calculate how much danger she was in. The answer was more than she could possibly imagine. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Phase 3 initiated. Check your email. The email contained a single attachment. A resignation letter from Peter Morrison to the Morrison Marketing Board of Directors, citing personal reasons and recommending an immediate audit of all executive communications and expense accounts. Except Peter hadn't written the letter. Laura had, using information from his personal files and a digital signature she'd obtained through methods she'd declined to explain. The letter wouldn't be sent for another week, giving us time to position all the pieces. I need to make some calls, Erin said suddenly, grabbing her purse. At 8 o'clock at night? Work emergency. She practically ran from the house, leaving her wine untouched and her carefully constructed facade in ruins. I called Laura. How did it go? She asked. Better than expected. He's terrified and Erin's in full panic mode. Perfect. That means they'll make mistakes. What's the next step? We let them destroy themselves. Panicked people do stupid things, and stupid things leave evidence. Laura was right. Over the next few days, Erin and Peter's careful affair became a desperate scramble to contain what they thought was an imminent exposure. They started meeting in public places, having frantic phone conversations, and sending increasingly careless messages, all of which Laura's investigator documented with professional precision. Meanwhile, I played the role of the suspicious but clueless husband. I asked more questions, made more comments, and generally behaved like someone who suspected something but couldn't quite figure out what. You seem stressed lately, I told Erin over breakfast Friday morning. Work's been complicated. Maybe you should talk to Peter about reducing your workload. She choked on her coffee. Why would you say that? He seems like a reasonable boss. I'm sure he'd understand if you needed some time to focus on our marriage. Our marriage is fine, Max. Is it? I looked at her directly. Because lately it feels like you're more invested in your career than in us. That's not true. When's the last time we had dinner together? Just the two of us, no work calls, no emergencies. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. We both knew it had been months. I'm trying to build something, she said finally. I thought we were building something together. We are, but I need to establish myself professionally first. With Peter's help. He's my boss, Max. Of course he helps with my career. Right. Your boss. I stood up and kissed her forehead. I'm glad you have such a dedicated mentor. The word mentor hit her like a slap. I could see her wondering how much I knew, how much I suspected, and how much danger she was really in. The answer was about to become very clear. That afternoon, Laura called with an update. The board meeting's been moved up. They're reviewing Peter's performance next week instead of next month. Why? Someone sent them an anonymous tip about irregularities in executive expense accounts. They're particularly interested in hotel charges and restaurant bills that don't correspond to official company business. Someone. A concerned employee who noticed patterns in the company's financial records. I didn't ask how Laura had gained access to Morrison Marketing's financial records. Some questions were better left unanswered. What happens next? Peter gets called in for questioning. Erin gets asked about her relationship with her supervisor, and we see how well they handle pressure. The pressure test came sooner than expected. That evening, Erin's phone rang during dinner, the first dinner we'd shared at home in weeks. I need to take this, she said, looking at the caller ID. We're eating. It's important. More important than this conversation? She hesitated, torn between her need to answer Peter's call and her growing awareness that I was watching her every move. The phone stopped ringing. See, I said. It wasn't that important after all. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Answer it, I said. I'll wait. Erin looked at me suspiciously, but she took the call. Hello? I could hear Peter's voice through the phone, urgent and panicked. Erin's face went white. I can't talk right now, she said. I'm having dinner with my husband. More urgent talking from Peter. I said I can't talk. She hung up and set the phone face down on the table. Work emergency? I asked. Something like that. Must be serious. Peter sounded upset. She stared at me. You could hear him? You're sitting 3 feet away and he was practically shouting. I took another bite of my dinner. Everything okay at the office? Fine. Everything's fine. But everything wasn't fine, and we both knew it. The careful structure of their affair was collapsing, and they were both too panicked to rebuild it properly. That night, after Erin had gone to bed early with a headache, I received another email from Laura. This one contained a single line. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Board meeting, final phase. I stared at the message for a long time, thinking about the 7 years I'd spent believing in a marriage that had been a lie for at least the last year. Tomorrow, Erin and Peter would face the consequences of their choices, and I would finally get to see if revenge really was a dish best served cold. The call came at 9:47 a.m. I was in my home office, pretending to work while actually monitoring the news feeds from Morrison Marketing, when Erin's phone started ringing. She'd left it on the kitchen counter while she showered, the first time in months she'd let the device out of her sight. The caller ID showed Peter M. I let it ring. It rang again 2 minutes later, then again. By the fourth call, I could hear Erin rushing around upstairs, probably looking for the phone she'd suddenly realized wasn't attached to her hand. She appeared in the kitchen wearing a bathrobe, hair still wet, panic written across her face. Have you seen my phone? I pointed to the counter. It's been ringing. She grabbed it and saw the missed calls. Her face went from panic to terror. I need to call in sick today, she said, already dialing. Are you feeling okay? Just tired. I think I'm coming down with something. She was coming down with something, all right. The consequences of her choices were finally catching up with her. I listened from my office as she made the call to her assistant, claiming a stomach bug that would keep her home for the day. Then she called Peter back. "What do you mean they want to see both of us?" she said into the phone. "Today?" I couldn't hear his response, but her reaction told me everything I needed to know. "No, I can't come in. I already called in sick." A pause. "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" Another pause, longer this time. "Peter, you're scaring me. What did they find?" I opened my laptop and logged into the local news website. The headline appeared at 10:15 a.m. Morrison Marketing CEO under investigation for misuse of company funds. The article was brief, but damaging. An anonymous tip had led to a board investigation into Peter Morrison's expense accounts, revealing a pattern of personal charges disguised as business expenses. Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, and travel expenses that didn't correspond to any official company business. The board had called an emergency meeting for 2 p.m. to discuss the findings and determine appropriate action. I printed the article and walked to the kitchen, where Erin was still on the phone with Peter. "I don't care what they found," she was saying. "There has to be an explanation." I set the printout on the counter where she could see it. Her face went white. "I have to go," she told Peter, and hung up. She stared at the article for a full minute without speaking. "Interesting news," I said finally. "This is—" She struggled for words. "This is a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The expenses. They're legitimate business expenses. According to this, they're hotel rooms and dinners that don't appear on any company calendar. Sometimes business happens outside the office. What kind of business requires hotel rooms in the middle of the afternoon?" She looked at me sharply. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. What kind of business meetings require hotel rooms?" "Confidential client meetings, strategy sessions, things you wouldn't understand. Try me." "Max, I don't have time for this. I need to figure out how to help Peter through this crisis." "Help him how?" "By providing context for those expenses, by explaining the legitimate business purposes." "And what are those legitimate business purposes?" She stared at me, trapped between the need to maintain her lie and the impossibility of explaining hotel room charges during work hours. "I can't discuss confidential company business with you." "Of course not." I poured myself a cup of coffee. "I'm sure Peter appreciates your loyalty." My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Board meeting moved to 1 p.m. They want to see Erin, too." I showed Erin the message. "How did you get this?" she asked. "Laura Graft is a friend. She thought I should know that my wife might be involved in a company investigation." "Laura Graft?" Erin's voice cracked. "Peter's wife?" "Ex-wife, actually. She filed for divorce yesterday." The color drained completely from Erin's face. "Divorce?" "Irreconcilable differences. She's asking for half of everything plus alimony." I sipped my coffee. "Apparently, she has evidence of adultery." Erin sat down heavily in one of our kitchen chairs. "Evidence? Photos? Hotel receipts? Communication records? The kind of evidence that holds up in court?" Oh, God. "The interesting thing is, she's not just divorcing Peter. She's also filing a complaint with Morrison Marketing's board about executive misconduct." "What kind of misconduct?" "Harassment, misuse of company resources, violation of the company's ethics policy." I sat down across from her. "The kind of thing that can end careers." Erin put her head in her hands. "This is a nightmare." "It gets worse." She looked up at me. "Laura's also filed a complaint with the state licensing board. Peter could lose his professional certifications." "She can't do that. She's a corporate lawyer, Erin. She knows exactly what she can do." My phone rang. Laura's name appeared on the screen. "I should take this," I told Erin. "Max?" Laura's voice was crisp, professional. Are you free to talk? Yes. The board meeting's been moved up again. 11:30. They want to see Erin immediately. She called in sick. That's not going to work. They have security footage of her entering the Marriott downtown last Tuesday at 2 p.m., the same time she was supposed to be in a client meeting. I looked at Erin, who was staring at me with growing horror. I'll let her know, I said. Max? Laura's voice softened slightly. Are you okay? I'm fine. This is almost over. I know. I hung up and looked at Erin. You need to be at Morrison Marketing in an hour. I can't. I'm sick. They have security footage, Erin. What kind of security footage? The kind that shows you entering a hotel with your boss when you were supposed to be somewhere else. She started crying then, quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her hands. Max, I can explain. Can you? It's not what it looks like. What does it look like? I don't know, but it's not that. What is it then? She looked at me through her tears, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 7 years ago, young, ambitious, scared. I made a mistake, she whispered. Just one? I made a lot of mistakes. How many mistakes, Erin? I don't know. I lost count. I stood up and walked to the window. Our suburban street looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but everything else had changed. The board meeting's in an hour, I said without turning around. What should I do? Tell the truth. The truth will ruin everything. Everything's already ruined. She was quiet for a long time. When I finally turned around, she was gone. I heard the shower running upstairs, then the sound of her getting dressed, then the garage door opening. She was going to face the consequences of her choices, and I was going to watch it happen. The news broke at 3:47 p.m. I was sitting in my office monitoring local business news websites when the headline appeared, Morrison Marketing CEO resigns amid scandal. The article was more detailed than the morning's story. Peter Morrison had resigned effective immediately following a board investigation into financial irregularities and inappropriate conduct with a subordinate employee. The board had accepted his resignation and announced that a full audit of company practices would be conducted. The subordinate employee, identified as Senior Marketing Associate Erin Brewer, had also been terminated for violation of company ethics policies. I stared at my wife's name in the news article, feeling nothing but a strange sense of completion. My phone rang. Darren. Dude, did you see the news? I saw it. Isn't that Erin's company? It is. Holy crap, man. Is she okay? She's fine. Where is she? I don't know. There was a pause. Max, are you okay? I'm perfect. You don't sound perfect. I sound exactly how I should sound. Another pause. Do you want me to come over? Not necessary. Max, Darren, I appreciate the concern, but I'm handling this exactly the way it needs to be handled. I hung up and went back to monitoring the news. More details were emerging. Morrison Marketing's stock had dropped 12% in after-hours trading. The board had announced a search for interim leadership. Several clients had already called to discuss their contracts. Peter Morrison's career was over. Erin's career was over, and I was just getting started. At 6 p.m., Erin came home. She walked into the kitchen where I was making dinner, pasta with marinara sauce, the first meal I'd cooked for myself in months, and sat down at the table without speaking. How did it go? I asked, stirring the sauce. You know how it went. I know what the news reported. I don't know what actually happened in that room. She was quiet for a long time. They had everything, Max. Photos, receipts, email records, security footage, everything. That must have been uncomfortable. They asked me questions I couldn't answer without admitting to things I didn't want to admit to. So you told the truth. I told them enough of the truth to avoid perjury charges. I turned to look at her. Perjury charges? Laura's filing a civil suit. Corporate fraud, misuse of resources, breach of fiduciary duty. Erin's voice was flat, emotionless. She's asking for damages that would bankrupt both of us. Both of us? Spouses can be held liable for financial crimes in some circumstances. I turned back to the stove. Interesting. Max, I need you to understand something. What's that? This wasn't supposed to happen. What was supposed to happen? Peter was going to leave Laura. He was going to promote me to vice president. We were going to build something together. Like we built something together? She flinched. That's different. How? You and I, we wanted different things. What did we want? You wanted stability, security, a quiet life in the suburbs. And you wanted? More. I served myself a plate of pasta and sat down across from her. Did you get more? I got nothing. That's not true. You got exactly what you chose. I chose Peter because I thought he could give me opportunities you couldn't. What kind of opportunities? Professional advancement, financial security, a chance to be someone important. And instead? Instead, I'm unemployed, unemployable, and facing a lawsuit that could destroy whatever's left of my life. I ate my pasta in silence, thinking about the conversation Laura and I had planned for this moment. We'd rehearsed different scenarios, prepared for various reactions, built contingencies for every possible response. But sitting across from my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, I realized I didn't need a script. Erin, I said finally, I want you to understand something. She looked up at me. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck or poor timing or a series of unfortunate coincidences. What are you saying? I'm saying that everything that happened today was the direct result of choices you made. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie to me. You chose to mock our marriage to the man you were sleeping with. How do you know about that? I know about all of it. She stared at me, and I could see her mind working, trying to calculate how much I knew and how long I'd known it. The restaurant, she said finally. The restaurant. You heard what I said to Peter. I heard what you said about me. Max, I was drunk. I didn't mean... You meant every word. She started crying again, but this time the tears felt different. Less like panic and more like grief. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without me. Are you divorcing me? The papers will be served tomorrow morning. On what grounds? Adultery, fraud, irreconcilable differences. I finished my pasta and stood up. Laura's representing me. She's very thorough. You planned this with Laura? Laura and I have been planning this for weeks. You set us up. You set yourselves up. We just documented it. Erin put her head in her hands. I loved him, Max. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. You loved what you thought he could do for you. That's not the same thing. And what about us? Did you ever love me? I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the woman I'd married, the dreams we'd shared, the future we'd planned together. I loved who I thought you were, I said finally. And now? Now I know better. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went upstairs to pack. I'd already arranged to stay at a hotel until the divorce was finalized. Laura had recommended a good attorney, not herself, since she was representing her own interests in the civil suit, and we'd scheduled a meeting for the following morning. As I folded clothes into a suitcase, I could hear Erin crying downstairs. Part of me, a small part, felt sorry for her. She'd made terrible choices, but she was still the woman I'd once promised to love and protect. But that promise had been broken long before today. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Congratulations, phase complete. I looked around the bedroom I'd shared with Erin for 7 years, at the photos on the dresser and the books on the nightstand, and all the small details of a life we'd built together. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked out. The last laugh, as it turned out, really was mine. Epilogue. The final word. 6 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, reading the business section of the newspaper, when I saw the headline, "Former Morrison Marketing CEO Declares Bankruptcy." The article was brief. Peter Morrison, unable to find employment after his resignation scandal, had filed for personal bankruptcy following a civil judgment that had awarded Laura Graft most of his assets. He was currently working as a sales associate at a car dealership in a suburb 40 miles away. There was no mention of Erin in the article, but I knew from Laura that she'd moved back in with her parents and was working part-time at a retail store while fighting the civil suit. Interesting reading? I looked up to see Laura approaching with 2 cups of coffee. "Just catching up on current events," I said, folding the paper. She sat down across from me and slid one of the cups in my direction. "Any regrets?" "About which part?" "Any of it." I thought about the question seriously. 6 months ago, I'd been a suburban husband with a cheating wife and a comfortable illusion about my marriage. Today, I was a divorced man with a successful consulting business and a clear understanding of my own worth. "No regrets," I said finally. "Good." Laura sipped her coffee. "Because I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" "I'm starting my own law firm, corporate litigation, with a focus on executive misconduct and fraud cases." "Congratulations. I need an IT consultant, someone who understands digital forensics, communication monitoring, and evidence preservation." I looked at her across the table, this woman who'd helped me destroy my wife's lover and rebuild my own life in the process. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership." "In destroying other people's lives?" "In holding powerful people accountable for their choices." I thought about Peter Morrison selling cars in the suburbs, about Erin folding clothes in a retail store, about all the other executives and spouses and subordinates who thought they were above consequences. "When do we start?" Laura smiled. "We already have." She pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. "Our first case, a pharmaceutical company CEO who's been embezzling research funds to pay for his gambling debts." I opened the envelope and scanned the documents inside: bank records, casino receipts, email communications, and a pattern of behavior that looked remarkably familiar. "How long have you been watching him?" 3 weeks. His wife hired me yesterday." "And she wants?" "Everything he thinks he's entitled to." I closed the envelope and looked at Laura. 6 months ago, she'd been the elegant, betrayed wife sitting in a restaurant, watching her husband toast his affair with my wife. Today, she was a successful attorney with her own firm and a reputation for taking down corrupt executives. "What's our success rate so far?" 100%. "And our client satisfaction rate?" 100%. I picked up the envelope and stood up. "Then I guess we have work to do." As we walked out of the coffee shop together, I thought about the conversation that had started this whole thing. Erin laughing with Peter about how predictable I was, how I'd probably apologize if she told me she was cheating. She'd been wrong about that, as it turned out. I'd never been predictable. I'd just been patient. And patience, as I'd learned, was the most devastating weapon of all. The last laugh really was mine.